The name of our company is NADR Genetics, founded by Group 38. We are offering a very new and exciting way to genetically test for late onset Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is a genetic variation that causes the tissues in the brain to degenerate over time. The degeneration of the brain causes gradual memory loss, judgment, and the ability to function. Some common symptoms of Alzheimer's can also be agitation, restlessness, and loss of language skills. Alzheimer's disease has an autosomal dominant pattern of inheritance. The infected individuals usually live up to 8 to 10 years after symptoms arise. However, the course will take 1 to 25 years to run its course. There are two types of Alzheimer's disease: early onset and late onset. The early onset is the less common and compromises less than 10% of Alzheimer's cases. The late onset form affects more than 5 million people in America and is 10.7% of people aged 65 and older. The disease is caused purely by genetic variation and not by environmental causes. The genes that are affected in early onset disease are APP, PSEN1, and PSEN2. These genes are not an effective way to test for Alzheimer's disease, but do show an increased percentage of the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. The gene is known to directly cause an increased risk of developing the disease is the APOE gene. This gene's function is to carry cholesterol and fats through the bloodstream by binding to lipoproteins. Reference 1.
23andMe does not test for the E2 and E3 variations. It only tests for the E4 variant. So we will be testing for the E2 and E3 variant on the APOE gene. The APOE gene provides instructions for making a protein called a polypoprotein E. This protein combines with fats in the body to produce molecules called lipoproteins, which package cholesterol and fats in the bloodstream. The APOE gene is found primarily in brain tissues. As stated by SNpedia, those with both the E3 and E4 variation of the allele have a 15 times higher risk of developing Alzheimer's than those who have both of the APOE3 alleles. Therefore, the variant is most associated with increased risk for late Alzheimer's disease. The E2 and E3 allele have less known information in relation to Alzheimer's, which is why we'll be testing these on our genetic test. For late onset Alzheimer's, 23andMe tests for the E4 variant in the APOE gene. We will be testing for the E2 and E3 variants of the APOE gene as well by using a SNP chip test. The E4 variant has clear connections to increased risk for Alzheimer's, but the E2 and E3 variants are somewhat less clear. Some studies suggest that a person with the E2 and E3 variants might have troubles with their brain cells' ability to process lipids. This may increase their risk for Alzheimer's. This protein is typically expressed in the brain cells and central nervous system cells. With these variants, there's an increased risk to develop the condition, although the exact increase is unknown. As far as late onset, the APOE gene is the only known risk factor. However, early onset Alzheimer's can be caused by mutations in the APP, PSEN1, and PSEN2 genes. This is reference 3.
For our specific brand of test, it will have the capability to test for the E2 and E3 variants of the APOE gene. Tests by other companies, 23andMe, for example, do not test for these two specific genes in the human genome. By being able to test for these two genes, along with the E4 variant, it will provide a more in-depth background and lead to a more transparent diagnosis for whomever is taking it. Taking a genetic test does not test for all the different outcomes that are found in different people. These genetic tests performed by 23andMe do not cover all of the different genetic variations that are out there. For example, the genetic tests that test for late onset Alzheimer's only test for the E4 variant. For Alzheimer's specifically, there are many different alleles that can cause this genetic variation, some things that have not been discovered yet. When taking a genetic test, the person needs to be aware of what the allele tests for. Another reason that someone might not want to take these tests is because some may not realize the risk increased percentages. Some genetic tests, like the example given in class, said that it was a large percentage increase, but when looked at and calculated, it was only a 7% chance of getting said variation. And this is citing references 1 and 4.
When tested positive for a certain genetic disease, there will be a variety of different emotions. Some people may feel relieved that they caught it early and are now able to treat it. Others will feel anger and get depressed because of their worst fear coming true. It can also affect the loved ones of the person that tested positive. It can make them stressed, and they could also get angry and depressed. There are many other emotions that can come when testing positive for these things, and they all vary with the person. Other than feeling a variety of different emotions, genetic testing could come with a price. The actual test may be cheap depending on the test and who provides it, but the treatment that could follow could be very costly. This is reference 3. And these are our references for our studies conducted, and this is our genetic test. We hope you go with NADR Genetics.